Hello and welcome back to the Mindful Belly Don't Eat Your Feelings podcast. I'm your host and health coach, Ellie Rome. So, for those of you new to this podcast, welcome. My name is Ellie. I'm a former chemical engineer, was a sugar addict my whole life, binge eater, compulsive eater, ended up developing a bunch of health issues, but through functional nutrition and mindfulness tools, completely transformed my relationship with food and my health. And now it is my mission to help other people do the same. And so, just a shout out. We just finished the 21-day reset for September. This is a group program I lead, and they did awesome. We had about 25 people in the group, and everyone showed up so fully. The results were amazing. The program is really a very practical paleo style protocol, but not only that, with the what to eat, getting out a lot of commonly inflammatory foods, but getting off sugar, really becoming mindful of sugar and carbohydrate intake, balancing blood sugar. And the bigger piece is emotional eating, is really coaching that, helping people develop a new mindset around food. And my favorite thing is that after the 21 days is listening to everybody talk about how they want to keep going, how they feel like this is lifestyle change. And not only that, this program, we're meditating every day, live in the Facebook group. We've got live fitness and yoga classes that everyone can attend. And it's just such a great group energy. And another great feedback that I get is that it's it's different than other programs because I'm actually reaching out to everybody. So which I love. And that's my favorite part of the program is that it's not some like here's 21 days, here's like a packet and good luck. No, I'm with you throughout the 21 days every day, live in the Facebook group. Everyone's getting emails every day, and then also reaching out to everybody in the group throughout the week to make sure that they're showing up. And then if they feel like they're being challenged or they're going out to eat or they've got a holiday party, that they know how to navigate it and they have the support and the confidence to do so. And I think bigger thing is to have the encouragement if you start to fall off track, because that's really where the magic happens is if you do slip, because slips are bound to happen. They just do. This is part of the process. And when you can accept that and come back and not let that mean like you failed and you might as well go binge, like that is so transformative. And I see this with my one-on-one clients too. It's just so important to have that accountability to know like, hey, it's okay. You slipped, great. Let's learn from it. Let's explore it. Let's be compassionate to ourselves. And how can we navigate it next time if the same scenario happens? And it's just that continuous coming back to your goals, coming back to yourself again and again and again and again. And it gets easier. And the refractory period or that period of coming back, like it gets quicker and it shortens and the compassion muscle builds. And that's where transformation happens. It's not in being perfect for the rest of your life because that is unattainable. So it's learning how to bounce back as quickly as possible, how to return to your higher self and find love for yourself. And that's what we build in this program. So again, this is my 21-day reset. I usually lead it about 4 times a year. The next one will be in January 2022. I do have a limit on the amount of people just because I am very personally involved in everybody's coaching. That's how I am as a coach. And so I do cap it. So if you are interested in the January reset, definitely check it out at mindfulbelly.com/21-day reset. Get signed up. And there is an early bird special if you sign up before Thanksgiving. So get on that if you know that you're going to want to reset in the new year after the holidays. And if you're looking for support during the holidays, which is one of the most challenging times for most people, and it doesn't mean you have to be 100% perfect, but if you need support and accountability to show up for yourself and to know how to navigate holiday parties and to have that accountability to check in and come back to yourself, um, you can set up a free strategy session with me for one-on-one coaching, and we'll see if we'd be a good fit. My ideal clients are people who are ready to transform their habits, not some quick fix diet, but really long-term habit change, long-term mindset change. And one of the biggest things that I've been loving is my clients just wanting to be so much kinder to themselves. And this was huge for me. And this is one of the things I think is so missed in diet culture is learning how to be compassionate, self-compassion. And that's one huge pillar. And that's what this episode is going to be about is a method of doing that is through a therapy called IFS, internal family systems. But this is what we do in one-on-one coaching, is not only address the nutrition needs and really optimizing your diet for you, getting off inflammatory foods, balancing your blood sugar, but also the emotional eating component, and also learning how to be so much more radically compassionate toward yourself and therefore to others, to be able to navigate life situations so you can go through life easier and not need to numb out with food, to address root cause of a lot of trauma that drives sugar addiction, that drives numbing out with food. And this is something that I didn't realize until I went through it myself, and how absolutely important it is. Otherwise, we will just keep falling back on old patterns. So it's waking up to compulsive behaviors, healing trauma, and just learning how to radically love yourself and love the judge, love that inner critic, and love the parts of you that binge. And we're talking about that in this episode, which can seem so counterintuitive. Most of us, I know for myself and what I see with clients, is the nature of beating ourselves up, self-loathing, thinking that that's going to help. But usually it just ends up into more shame spirals, which usually ends up driving us to eat or reach for other coping mechanisms. So it's learning how to break free from that is where the freedom lies. And it's so much more fun to go through life when you love yourself and you can just like not beat yourself up all the time. It's the best. It's the best. And I can speak from personal experience because I know what it's like and I still beat myself up. But it's just so much easier to come back to that compassion and realize when I'm doing it and find love again and again and again and soften. And that's where meditation helps so much, where breath work helps so much. And IFS, which is internal family systems, it is a therapy model that has helped me so much develop radical self-compassion and to really start learning how my mind works. And and so today I'm so excited to have JAMI LYNN on here. She is an IFS practitioner that I've personally seen. I was looking for a practitioner and found her, and she has just been amazing. I love using and learning about these parts work, not only for myself, but then to be able to use with clients. And I've just watched them radically transform the way they speak to themselves and the way they're showing up for themselves and loving on themselves versus letting that inner critic run wild, and actually learning to love the inner critic and be able to speak gently to all of their parts. And so this may sound confusing, but this is also known as like parts work. So it's essentially that we have all these different parts of us that really maybe want to lose weight and want to achieve our health goals. And then there's parts that may really want to binge on sugar and are scared to not be able to just eat whatever we want. And really, there's parts that don't want to go for the workout. It's like all these different parts. So it's being able to start exploring the different parts of our psyche that come up and realize that you can see them as like little children, like your inner children, and then your higher self. So in IFS, there's the capital S self that is always there, that is present in everybody. And that self is almost, in my mind, I see it as like I'm the mother, like the cool, gentle, loving mother to all my little parts. And when I can come back to that, and that higher self is compassionate and curious and calm, and she's always there. And so when I can remember to return to her when I am beating myself up, and can I talk to the part that's so upset that is beating me up, and like, oh, what's going on for you? And the part maybe that binged, and being able to have compassion for that part. What's going on for you? And JAMI LYNN's going to explain these different parts. And in IFS, I'm going to just go quickly through it. So there's the exiles, which are parts of us that maybe felt really deep shame or trauma or anger or just some difficult emotion that our psyche never wants to feel again. It's like, no, 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 don't go there. So what happens is then with these other parts of our psyche become protector parts. So protectors can either be a firefighter or a manager. Firefighters can be very like impulsive actions like binge eating and reaching for sugar or numbing out with drugs or alcohol, addictive type things, and basically to distract or to numb, to never have you feel that difficult emotion. And then there's managers who are more like perfectionism tendencies, like, no, 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 you got to be perfect. don't let anyone see your mistakes, because then you will protect you from shame or embarrassment, disappointment. Or no, 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 don't go after that thing. You might fail. Oh no, you've tried 27 diets already. You're going to fail on this next one. Why even try? To avoid that disappointment and so it's just these protectors can come up in so many different ways, but that's just a general gist. So we've got exiles, and then we've got protector parts, which are either firefighters or managers. And if you can think of these all as, like, for me, it helps to think of them all as little children. So as they come up, it's like, oh, you're like freaking out. Or if you have like a really impulsive reaction, maybe you yell at your kids and then you're shaming yourself for yelling at your kids. Like, can you come back to higher self and speak to that part of you that exploded, and just like, oh, what were you feeling? What were you going through? And it's really starting to be able to have these gentle dialogues and getting so curious about what's going on versus shaming. And then the inner critic that may be shaming, can you be able to speak to that part? Like, oh, why are you so upset? And it's just like, I can't tell you how powerful this is, especially for binge eating and sugar addiction, because so often the cycles happen where we do binge, and then that horrible shaming spiral comes. And then I know for myself, and what I see with clients is then it followed by a period of restriction, and that's restrictions usually out of self-loathing or punishment. And then that lasts for a little while, and then something happens in life. We're stressed, we're triggered by something, and then it's a binge again, followed by restriction. And it's just this toxic cycle. And what I've seen work the most that is absolutely essential, is that developing this radical compassion. And the IFS method is so helpful in doing this, but it is a muscle, and it's something to just continue to practice. So I'm so excited for JAMI LYNN's interview, and just to be able to give you tools to be able to start doing this for yourself. And you can start today. So with that, let's dive into the episode with JAMI LYNN. And if you have questions, as always, reach out to me on Instagram, or you can connect with JAMI at her Instagram, which is at practice intimacy. All right, y'all, let's go to the show. Hi, JAMI LYNN. How are you?
I'm doing so well, Ellie. It's good to see you.
You too. I'm really excited for this conversation. I feel like you, just in the sessions I've had with you, have really helped me so much. So I'm so excited to share with the listeners kind of like the practices that you do and how they can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is going to be fun. I'm excited too.
Awesome. Well, to begin, I would love if you could just share a little bit about who you are and how you got into the work that you do.
Absolutely. So I am a therapist primarily. I work with couples and people who want more intimacy in their life. I've been doing this now for, I think, 7 years, and I love it. I've always known that I would be a therapist from the time I was like 8 years old. I saw the movie Good Will Hunting, and the scene where Robin Williams is saying, "It's not your fault, it's not your fault." And then there's like the cathartic moment and everything. I was done. I was like, this is the job for me. This is what I'm going to do. and I just did all of my education straight through and was on the path from a pretty young age, actually, because I knew I would love this job.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so couples is your focus, and I guess what made you want to work with couples?
So any therapist you ever meet, for the most part, there are a few outliers, but most of us, we get into therapy because we're trying to heal ourselves. You don't know that until you've started doing lots of work. But once you finally recognize, like, oh, I started this job to really learn how to heal myself. And for me, relationship has always been the hardest thing, even though I love it. Like, it's the thing I'm most interested in. It's the thing I've always felt a draw and a pull towards. But it's been challenging. And that has to do with my history and my family. Like, relationships have just been a challenge.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then sexuality, like, I've always been the person who wants to know more about sex. And when my mom gave me a sex ed book as a little one to learn about like menstrual cycles and stuff, she said, "Don't flip past this page." And I went through the entire book. So
she was out of story by telling you not to flip past the page.
Right, exactly. Although my older sister, she did not flip past the page. So there's differences in personality out there.
Oh man, that's so awesome. And so how did you get into, I guess, IFS?
So IFS, it is something that I discovered while I was still doing my graduate program. I did a master's of counseling in Austin, and I had one particular professor who was wonderful. Her name's Sunny Lansdale, and she did the trauma recovery class. She brought in a guest speaker who just went through like, here's what the parts model is. Here are the different parts as IFS lays it out. IFS is internal family systems. It's a therapy model created by Dick Schwartz. And when she said, like, here's the way that we lay out a person's system, I was hooked. I was completely hooked. I knew that this was a model I needed to learn. I learned it while I was still in my graduate program, and it's the thing that I've been using the most in my practice. I've learned other models as time has gone on, and this one, I really think of it as like a theory of mind more than anything else. So, in the world of therapy, you can learn tools and skills, and that's wonderful. But unless you're looking at a whole person's system through a specific theory of mind that makes sense to you, I think it's actually hard to do this work. And with IFS, the theory of mind says people are not homogenous. We do not move through the world with a single state. Instead, we have multiple different states that can come up and kind of take over our system based on whatever's happening around us. And we call those different parts of us. So one part of me is running and working in one situation, and a different part of me is going to come up in a different situation. And whenever you look at the neuroscience behind this, it just makes sense. Like, our brains are built to have multiple different moods and states and reactions. We have different neural networks that hold different information. And so we all respond to things in different ways. And then the theory of mind part of it is like, okay, so the way you get to know your own mind is learning about these different parts that are living inside of you.
Yes, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah,
And it's been so eye-opening for me. I mean, I'm so new to it, but just working with you and just studying it, it's been such a powerful tool. And
it's so useful. I do it internally all the time. Like now I interact with my parts daily. And then with clients, like there are some people who love parts as the language, and then there are other people who it's easier for them just to think of like, I'm relating to my anger now, or I'm relating to my little one who's scared in my relationship. Like the language doesn't always have to be parts, but it's an easy way to just kind of differentiate between there's me, my fully integrated brain. In IFS they call this the self. It's the curious, compassionate part of us. um, but whenever I think about it, I just think of it as the integrated brain.
oh,
And then there's all the different parts of me, the ones that are reacting to the world from a learned behavior pattern place.
yes. Could we give so like the most of the listeners listening to this are usually addicted to sugar, binge eating, or using food to cope in some way. And so through that lens, I guess, is there an example we could give or you could provide of how this part's like the higher self versus
Oh, yes, absolutely. Okay. So let me first just break down the IFS as there's categories that we put things into. So one category is the protectors. We call them managers and firefighters. And then the other category are the exiles. So there's two big buckets, protectors and exiles. Exiles are the parts of us that are holding something painful. Oftentimes it's either an experience that was terrifying or an experience that was shaming. So they're often holding like either lack of safety and danger, or they're holding lack of self-worth. Those are the exiled parts. Firefighters are the parts of us that will do anything to make it to where we don't feel the exile energy. And the same with managers, but they go about it different ways. So the protectors are all about like, I never ever want to feel pain. I don't want to feel the pain of my exile, keep it down and away, keep it out of the system. Not possible, but they try. And so firefighters, they go about keeping you from feeling the pain by using something that feels good. So this would be like any kind of substance use, including food. This would be using sex to feel better. This would be using really any kind of coping skill that takes you out of the painful experience and into some kind of experience that feels fun and exciting. Other firefighters would be like cutting or going out and taking drugs, things like that. Managers are the ones who try and help us behave in a certain way, but they do it through like, be perfect. So I kind of think of the managers as the perfectionistic parts. They try and keep firefighters from behaving and acting out. If we do act out from our firefighter place, then the managers will shame them. And the managers try and keep the exiles from ever coming up, that energy, the painful hurt energy, by making our life perfect. So if I think about my own managers, they look like my shiny face, is what I call one of them. The part of me that moves through the world really happy and like energized and excited. That is absolutely manager energy. I can be in that space from a fully integrated brain self, but if it's from a place of like, no, I have to feel good, I have to be perfect, I have to interact with the world this way, then it's manager energy. Is this making sense so far?
This makes total sense. Yes.
Okay, great, great. And then the last one in IFS that we talk about, it's not actually a part. We don't think of it that way in IFS. It's called self, um, which the language is hard. It's hard to come up with the right word for this, especially in English because it's such a new language. But you can think of self energy as like Christ consciousness, Buddha consciousness, the collective consciousness. You could think of it as Atman in Hindu philosophy. It's the part of us that is connected to like our best self, our highest self, divinity, whatever language works for you, universe, love. Love really works for me. Like it's our most loving and compassionate self.
Mhm. That makes sense. So we've got our most compassionate self, so higher self, then exiles, which are things we don't want to feel, or like shame, maybe
Hmm. Shame and
trauma,
fear. Yeah.
fear. Okay, and then the two types of uh,
Protectors.
protectors, firefighters, and managers.
That's exactly it.
Okay, and then
Yeah.
um so I guess someone who's binge eating,
Yes.
how if and maybe it's out of I guess, do you have an example? Have you worked with anyone who's ever like addiction or binge
Yeah.
eating?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just move through the cycle that a person who would binge eat might go through. First, there's the exile energy, some kind of pain that's happening. And it could be I'm not worthy pain, it could be some kind of fear or danger pain. But that's the first thing that's activated in a person's system. And then once that energy is up and online, next comes a firefighter to try and stop them from feeling that pain. And the way I'm going to do that is by eating, right?
Mhm.
After I've done that behavior, which is soothing to my system, because now I'm not feeling the pain of the exile, thank goodness. After that, what happens is a manager comes in that usually shames the firefighter for the behavior. So a part of you comes in and says, I should not have done that. Binge eating is harmful to me. It's disgusting. How could I do that to myself? And usually what happens is that shame that the manager is saying to the firefighter actually goes and hits the exile, the one who is feeling pain to begin with. And the cycle starts up again.
That makes so much sense.
Hmm.
So I guess to interrupt the cycle, what are the steps to take to start healing that pattern?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll use IFS language, but I'll also explain it neurologically some. So the cycle, the way that you stop it is you actually bring self online. Self is the most curious, compassionate, creative, and loving part of us. And so when I bring myself online, it's interacting with the different parts from a place of curiosity and compassion. So I would be curious and compassionate first towards the protectors. So in the world of IFS, one of the things you always hear is all parts are welcome. And usually when we look at the protectors, the firefighter is not welcome. The binge eating behavior is not welcome. There's a manager that says, I'm bad for doing this. I should not be doing this. And really, what self can do is come in and say, No, wait, let's get really curious about why this feels necessary. Firefighter, you have to do this. Otherwise, something really bad would happen. What bad thing might happen if you did not do this? So it's bringing curiosity first, and then the compassion moves would be really trying to understand what is going on inside my system that this actually feels necessary. How am I taking care of myself by doing this behavior? That's the hardest part of the work, to be perfectly honest, because our protectors are really strong. They have really firm ideas about either the manager saying, I should not be binge eating, this is a bad thing, I should not do it, or the firefighter believing, no, I have to do this. This is absolutely necessary for me to move through the world feeling somewhat better than I do if I didn't binge. And so coming into contact with them first and really understanding what their jobs are, what they're trying to do for you, holding them with love and openness helps them relax enough that you can then move towards the exile, the part of you that's feeling pain and hurt, and begin to understand what happened to you, that you have something going on inside that's aching. And when you can bring that part love as well, so love and compassion to all three of these different parts of you, your system can relax and begin making choices rather than reacting.
Thank you. And so with, I mean, cultivating that sense of love and compassion, I know can be really difficult,
Oh,
especially
yeah.
in a state of like shaming yourself.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
guess like in my mind, whenever I'm doing it, I like think of these parts like little children.
They
Um,
often are. Yeah.
yeah, is there any tools you have, I guess, to help come into that sense of compassion?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so Brene Brown is the leader in talking about shame and compassion. She's wonderful. If anybody wants resources, definitely check out her work. And then also Kristen Neff. She's another person who's done lots of research into self compassion, and her stuff is great. Um, let's talk about the neuroscience first. So, when we are moving into shame, what we're doing is we're activating our amygdala. Because when we're in shame experiences, we're telling ourselves either I'm bad or not enough. And when we say that in our mind, it actually creates a sense of danger. All of us, every single being on this planet, our nervous system is designed to react to danger in a way that's meant to protect ourselves. And so that's actually how all these different parts of us are born. They're not trying to hurt us. They're not attempting to do something because it's going to cause us pain. No, it's actually really adaptive. The things that they're doing are truly trying to protect us from feeling in pain, whether that's shame pain or actual danger. Neurologically, whenever we're lighting up our amygdala with fear and danger, our whole nervous system goes into stress mode. And if you look at research, about 90% of illness is either caused by chronic stress or is made worse by chronic stress. The opposite of this shame, terror experience inside of our nervous system is a compassion experience. When we move into compassion, whether it's self compassion or compassion for others, we turn on part of our prefrontal cortex that actually sends GABA. So it's a neurotransmitter in the brain that soothes and calms the rest of our nervous system. So, neurologically, if you can help yourself move into a compassionate state, you're soothing your nervous system, you're decreasing stress, you're helping to honestly create a more healthy internal world for yourself. Some people have a really hard time with self compassion. And so, the way that you can actually practice this is working with somebody who's an innocent other first. And what you said is a really good way to think about it. Like, most of our parts are really young. And so bringing compassion to a little one is a lot easier than bringing compassion to my adult self. So starting there is one way to do it. If you have a really good friend who's in a similar position, you can also bring compassion to them because it's easier to be compassionate towards somebody else. And then attempt to turn the same feeling onto yourself. And you just have to keep practicing that. Like, one of my businesses is called Practice Intimacy, and I chose that name for a very specific reason. I think that people have forgotten how to do practices. It's not something we teach in our culture. We don't really help each other to engage in things over and over and over again until they become traits, or at least not the positive ones. We do help each other with the more negative ones, like, oh, let's practice watching TV or practice getting on our phone every time it dings, right? But practices that actually builds neuroceptive safety inside of your body and mind, we've lost those in Western culture. And so, one of my favorite things to do is to really look at older practices. You can look at specifically metta meditations, METTA meditations. This comes out of Buddhism. And it's just a loving kindness meditation where you can start with an innocent other and then move closer towards yourself. And what you do is you say, I wish you peace. I wish you freedom from pain. I wish you love. I wish you happiness. That's a great way to practice compassion.
Mm. Yes, thank you for that.
Hmm.
And then for anyone, I guess, when like finding out these exiles, so how do you start working or like healing exiles?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first, you have to get permission. Our protectors are there to keep us from feeling exile energy. That's their entire job. I don't ever want to feel that pain that I've felt before. And so, first, you have to work with the protectors and get permission to go there. And the way I often do this is to be with a person, communicating to them, like, the reason we want to go here is because we want to help. And if you allow us to go to this place that is so painful, we actually can make a difference. It might be scary to go there. It might feel like you can't. It might feel like you'll be overwhelmed by how emotional or like physically activating it is. That's really what we're often afraid of. It's going to be too scary to go to that place. The exile energy is so terrifying for our system. And I can say the words, but take a moment and really try and imagine those moments where your heart is pounding, your gut is twisting, your whole body is flushed, and it feels like you're going to die or like you're going to cry for the rest of your life. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Nobody wants to go there. And so, first, we have to get permission from the protectors to go there. And once you're in that space, it's really about witnessing. So inside myself, I would be asking questions like, what happened, young part of me, that was so terrifying for you? Tell me what happened to you. I'm here, I'm listening. That's really my self energy online, one that can be there as a witness with love and compassion and just openness to the experience of whatever happened to you. Having that having that witnessing, compassionate energy actually brings new information into a neural network that was previously only holding pain. And when we do that, which we can do it one time for some people, but for other people, you have to do it multiple times. It really just depends on your particular history and what you've experienced. But over and over again, as you bring that new information into the neural network, as you build compassion into your system and you really like integrate these parts that used to be exiled and shut off from the rest of the system, there's less activation because now you know, oh, I can hold this part of myself with love and kindness. It's not as scary as it used to be.
Yeah. And then I guess what happens to the protector parts when one, like, I guess asking them to set aside
Right.
or
Hmm.
happens to
Yeah.
me?
Yeah. So usually what ends up happening, once the exile energy relaxes, once that's not as painful as it used to be, the protector does not have to do that same job. It doesn't have to, I'm thinking of a firefighter now, it doesn't have to binge eat in the same way it used to because there isn't the pain that's activating your system to try and self soothe through eating. And so instead, that protector could do something else. I usually ask them, like, oh, now that it feels like there's space inside, what would you like to do instead of the job you were doing? And some of the answers I get are wonderful. Sometimes it's like, I'd actually really love to go learn how to dance, or I want to start this new project, or I want to um, take care of myself in this other way. Like maybe I want to start meditating. I don't know. It's so interesting. The managers, they're very creative. They know what your system wants instead of what they were doing previously.
Mm. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing to witness.
Uh, and what are other ways, I guess, like a lot of what I found with like uncovering with people with sugar addiction and binge eating is like just this low, like this sense of unworthiness. Uh,
Mhm.
start working with that.
Yeah, yeah. So this would be the protector energy and also exile. But honestly, first I'm going for the protectors. A lot of the reasons why people feel unworthy is because there's a part of them saying you're bad for doing this behavior. And there are other things underneath that, but you can't actually go to the deeper exile experience of where they learned they were unworthy until you work with the protector first. So, first, it's really that idea of all parts are welcome, right? Making space for yourself, holding compassion for yourself in this behavior that you don't actually like. This doesn't mean that your managers have to suddenly be happy about the protector that binge eats. They don't have to like it, they don't have to do anything like that. But just coming into a space where you're fully integrated, you're in self energy, and you can say to yourself, I see you doing this thing and I love you. And I'm so curious about what happened to you. There's nothing wrong with you. Something's going on that this feels necessary. Let's find out why. And so, with unworthiness, after you come into a space of like really being welcoming, there's a part of you that genuinely believes you are unworthy. It is welcome to be here. I want to learn more about it. Can we talk to that part? Rather than the usual thing that all of us do. I hate that part. I want it to go away. I don't want to feel like this, which, of course, you don't want to feel like that. It's awful. It feels so uncomfortable. But that's never actually going to change your system. Hating it will just perpetuate the cycle. Whereas saying, okay, there's a part of me that learned I was unworthy. I want to know more. Where did you learn this? How did you learn this? And then all of us are different. We learn these things from different spaces. Usually it has to do with our earliest relationships, often parents, but not necessarily. It could be with siblings. Um, it could be with anyone in your family. It could be peers whenever you're really young, honestly. But we live in a culture that is competitive. We live in a culture that is shaming and tells us we need to look and act and be a certain way in order to be accepted. And so most people have these ideas that they're not worthy. I think it's the thing that's really harming our species right now, the comparison, the telling each other you have to be a certain way in order to be lovable, and making the paradigm shift internally of that's not true. All people are worthy, all people are lovable, we all have an inherent value that really requires like sitting with your own belief system, sitting with your values. I remember the first time that my mentor had me do this piece of work. She said to me, okay, I want you to really, really think about this. Really sit with your answer. Like, don't rush. Do you actually believe that all people are equal? It's the thing that our Constitution says, it's the thing that almost every religious text says. But do you genuinely believe that all people are equal? And I remember this was 4 years ago. I sat with the question. I was like, I want to say yes. I want to say yes. But the answer is no. Like, I don't actually think all people are equally valuable. I do put people on a hierarchy in my mind. And when I finally came into contact with that truth, it was more possible for me to start changing it internally, to catch myself whenever I'm putting someone down in my mind or putting myself down compared to another person in my mind, and begin to like, no, I don't believe that. That's not okay. That's not what I actually value. All people are equal. Everyone is valuable. So that's a big internal shift that would help a person move towards really recognizing their own self-worth.
Thank you for that. That was
Mhm.
beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I also wanted to ask you about the one thing. I guess we'll start with for like body image. So having
Mhm.
a negative body image, like I know for myself and just for so many women, it's like this constant striving for this ideal body, and like then looking back at like high school and you're like, I was like a twig, but I was trying to lose weight, and it was just like,
Right.
why did I not see how like beautiful I was or in
Absolutely.
college? And so what can we do with that?
Yeah. Oh, I love this question. So it's back to the comparison. Like, and I'll give another resource because I think it's so helpful. There is a book by Sonia Renee Taylor called The Body Is Not an Apology. Every single person in the world should read this book. It is so good. And it's one of the best ones I've read about really helping you break that internal hierarchy that we put ourselves on. I need to look this way in order to be accepted. I need to look this way in order to be loved. It's a hard thing to break. It really is. I personally, like, I'm going through a little bit of a struggle right now. I have dealt with body image issues my entire life. And I did lots of work around it. And I got to a place where I was like, okay, I actually really feel a lot of love for my body. And that allowed me to do more movement in my life because I actually love movement. I mainly do yoga and weightlifting. And now that I've weightlifted more because I freaking love it. It makes me so happy. I'm having to work on my self image again because there's a part of me that's going, no, don't get too strong. Don't get masculine. And I'm like, oh, hi there, love. You're so scared. You're so scared that if this were to happen to your body, people would stop loving you. I get it. That's really, really scary. No matter what happens, I'm going to love you over and over and over again. I do this with myself on the inside. Anytime that part gets activated, anytime I look in the mirror and she's like, don't get too strong. I'm like, hi, love, there you are. You're so scared of being rejected by others. It's terrifying to you. And then what I often do for myself is I'll actually look at lots and lots of different bodies. So I didn't used to have Instagram, but for my business I got on Instagram and TikTok and all the different things. And you get to see a wide variety of humans on these platforms. If you were to look at your platform and you only see certain kinds of bodies, I would challenge you to really dig in and start finding other people so that you can really see the variety of human because we all look so different. And there's so much beauty in the variety. There's so much beauty in all the differences. And when you can start witnessing that and valuing that, it makes it easier to put less pressure on yourself to be a certain way in order to be lovable and worthy enough.
Yes, I love that so much.
Of course.
Yeah, and is this something too where like I guess like to talk to the different, like you mentioned, like for yourself, talking, just offering that compassion to yourself. Is there any exile energy you feel like that would be there around body image?
Let's see. To me, it feels very protector, the one that says, don't get too strong. Like that feels like protector energy to me. So it's coming from a fear place. It's trying to protect me from getting really like excluded from the group. There are like genetic makeup says you have to be part of the group, you have to be acceptable. So some of this is really just built into our system because we're communal creatures, but that some of it is social. The idea of this is what I'm supposed to look like in order to be acceptable, like that's all social. The desire to be accepted is genetic. So whenever it comes to the exile energy, I usually let me sit with it for a second. Okay. So if I get past the protector, the one that's like, don't get too strong, then eventually where I go is this really tender spot in my chest, like right below my heart. And I get a little bit teary, like it's a choked up feeling. And the memories that come up are just the ways in which my family always talked about beauty. Like I can see it right now in my mind. I can see things like my dad grabbing fat on me and my sister's stomach whenever we were little, and my family always complimenting people if someone lost weight, and like even getting compliments about the way my butt was shaped. Things like that come into my mind. And from there, what I can do is I can be with the younger self and just witness, like, yeah, you learn some really messed up things about what it means to be a human in this world, what it means to be valuable. You learned that your body has to be a specific way, otherwise, people won't give you attention and love. If you look a certain way, you will get attention and love. I'm so sorry you learned that, babe. That's not true. That is not true at all. That's usually how I talk to my parts.
So good, Jamie.
Yeah.
Because I'm noticing I'm similar stuff has come up recently. So I've lost a little bit of weight in the last month or so and getting a lot of compliments. And then there is this fear energy part that's like, uh-oh, like don't slip, don't go back because you won't get that attention. And it's
Yes.
like being able to like, oh, like breathe into that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's never about trying to make your parts act differently. That's not the point of this. The point is to witness the reality of their experience with love and compassion. Yeah, you are getting more attention. It is so scary to imagine that that will go away. And the idea that people value you more, one, it's harmful to our species. I think it's actually true in some cases. I think that there are people who value each other based purely on looks. That does not fit into how I want to be in the world. It does not match my internal desire to live in this world. And so for me, I'm actually going to reject that learning. I'm not going to hold on to it. And instead, I'm going to be with that part who lives in that space of hierarchy and tell her in my part whenever it comes to the body image stuff. They're usually women. Not all of my parts are women, but the body image stuff usually are. So I would tell her, like, yeah, you learned something about the world that's really messed up. And I don't think it's right. And I think it's damaging to you and everyone else who learned this thing. I've got you. I know it's going to be scary. I know there are actually people who will reject you if, in my case, if you get strong and really like fit in a way that looks more masculine. There are some people who will reject you. And I've got you. It's not everyone who's going to feel that way. I've got you. I love you. Over and over and over again. I'm glad that we kind of touched on this because I don't think we talk about it enough. But there is a reality that if you choose to go on the journey of really loving yourself, really accepting yourself exactly as you are, there will be people who push back against that. There will be people who want to continue to live in the hierarchy, not necessarily because that's their value, but that's because what they learned in this life. I think it's the thing that perpetuates racism, fat phobia, transphobia, sexism. Like there are actually people who are going to continue living in that paradigm. I hope they choose differently. I hope that our existence as we grow, every single one of us who's doing our own work to become more loving, I hope we invite them on the journey with us because I think it's a much better way to be in the world. But if you choose to do this work, you are actually stepping out of what is typical.
Yes. I'm so glad you're speaking to that and to be able to. So, how do you? Any tips on how to like navigate that if you get pushback or?
Yeah, yeah. In the end, it's really about finding your people. Like, find people who are talking about being authentic rather than being acceptable, perfect, fit, whatever the thing is. Um, there are so many humans in this world who genuinely love themselves. I think Sonia Renee Taylor and Brene Brown are great resources to start looking at what it could be like if people shift into a new dynamic. And they don't talk about like, oh, I need to be different and then I can love myself. No, The idea is I'm going to be me and love myself. And if you allow your world to open up to more people who are already in that space, it's easier to get there. And usually these are the marginalized people. These are people who our culture that is racist and sexist and ableist has said, no, you're not good enough. And they're saying, yes, I am. I know it. Nothing you say is going to change that. I am worthy and lovable exactly as I am. You can join me here. You don't have to shame yourself and be perfect. I've got air quotes going. People can't see it, but like perfect's not real. You don't have to be perfect in order to be loved. You can actually just be you.
Thank you. So good. Uh, and I also wanted to ask you about we had talked about this I think in our first session, just the act of spiritual bypassing. So like
Yes.
yeah, so like feeling a difficult emotion and then not actually sitting with your parts or feeling the emotion, but yeah. Can we talk about that concept?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so spiritual bypass. I am very familiar with it. I'm a lady who likes to meditate and do yoga. And those are some of the easiest ways to get into like a spiritual bypass place. You can also do this if you're a religious person. Like prayer can be a spiritual bypass at times. What's actually happening whenever you do this is there's some kind of painful experience. And if you were to really witness it and be with it, what you're doing is you're inviting the pain to come up in a way that is fully embodied. And also, you're getting the whole story of why this pain exists. A spiritual bypass usually is like, there's pain here. I'll look at it for a moment, but then I'm going to do something that feels good to me. I'm going to move toward feeling good, and I'm just going to be so zen that I can pretend the pain does not exist. And it's actually totally possible to live your life like that. You can meditate and do yoga and pray and be happy until it seems like you've worked on all of your internal ouch, as I like to think of it sometimes. But the reality is it's there. It's absolutely there. And you're just pushing it further away with your managers.
And so I guess what are the practices to I guess just the awareness of when if you have an impulse to reach for one of those modalities?
I think that's part of it. The other thing is coming into a space. I'm trying to think of the words for this. Coming into a space where you really genuinely believe that you can tolerate painful things. And you also recognize that pain is a part of life. A lot of the time, whenever we do spiritual bypass, it's because there's a part of us that believes, no, I should feel good all the time. That's what life is like. That's what reaching an enlightened state is like. I'll feel good all the time. That's not actually true. What happens whenever you do this kind of work is you increase your ability to tolerate life. And not just tolerate it, but actually hold it with love and kindness. I can hold everything in existence without having to disconnect or turn off or hate any of it. This doesn't mean I don't want to change things in the world and make it a better place. Absolutely, I want to do those things too. But I can tolerate being with reality as it is, including all of the pain in the world and in myself.
Thank you. It's so
Yeah.
good.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm having fun. This is my favorite topic, how to be in the world in a loving and kind way so that you can experience more.
Yes. And I also wanted to ask you of just the concept of reparenting and like inner child work. I feel like
Mm.
it feels like a lot of the parts work is like inner child work, but just like
Oh, absolutely.
um
Absolutely. So often when you start doing this work, you'll see a pattern where the exile is usually a young part, usually real little, 5 and younger, often. Sometimes a little older than that, but usually around like 5, 6, 7, and younger. Manager energy is usually more like a teenager. So around teenage years, we start to have a little bit more autonomy. We start to have more separation from our caretakers. We're building our personality. And at that time, we learn adaptive strategies to try and help ourselves be in less pain. So we look at adults, we imagine that they've got their shit together, and we try and do whatever we can to get to that place, whether that's trying to look a certain way, trying to act a certain way, trying to achieve a certain thing. Like these parts of us, they are immature, trying to act mature. And then our highest self, I like to think of it as the adult brain. And I also think of this as the integrated brain. I kind of use those interchangeably. But reparenting looks like bringing your adult brain, the part of you that is able to hold duality, able to really understand and know your values, able to move through the world with curiosity and compassion, the two most important things, I think, to get through this life well. Um, that part of you is able to interact with these young ones that learn something about the world that might not actually be true because they learned it whenever they were still in an immature state of growth. Like all of us, our brains are actually not able to make sense in the same way that we can as adults because our brain has not fully developed till we're at least 25. And so they, the little ones, learn something about the world that's not actually true. And often reparenting is bringing all of the knowledge and wisdom that I have inside my being as an adult person who's fully integrated and looking at the world through a lens of, wow, this is really hard and complex. Oh, people have it rough. I have it rough. I need to be kinder to myself. If we look at these young parts who were just doing their best, trying to get through life through that lens, that's reparenting. That's the guidance that often we missed because all of us are trying our best in a world that's really hard.
I love it so much. Oh man, this is so helpful. And I also wanted to ask you about just for anyone who's really new to this journey, um,
Mhm.
what would be like initial steps you would have them take to start like learning about their parts or just being more compassionate to themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm kind of organizing my mind. The therapy route is wonderful. If you are able to go into therapy, that's a great way to do it. There's a directory on the IFS website for anyone who's been trained in this particular model. So that's a great resource if you're looking for a therapist who would have this kind of training. Therapy is also expensive. Not everyone can do that. So if you're in a space where maybe that's not an option for you, then the best thing you can do is start reading books, taking in podcasts from people who are doing this kind of work. I really think Brene Brown is one of the leaders in self compassion and really accountability and also valuing yourself, knowing you're worthy. She's wonderful. So her podcast is a great resource. It's called Unlocking Us. And then she also has another one called Dare to Lead, where she interviews different thought leaders. And that one's wonderful. Um, And then if you can start any sort of meditation practice, people often think meditation is about clearing your mind completely. It's actually not that. Meditation, you can do one of a couple of ways. There's like three ways to do meditation. All of them are great. Either you're doing single pointed focus on one thing, and that could be your breath, that could be a mantra, that could be a particular style of movement like yoga or I'm trying to think, is it Tai Chi? Yeah, Tai Chi. It could be any of those things, but it could also just be sitting quietly and watching your own mind function. Just seeing what happens whenever you sit for 10 minutes quietly. Where does my mind go? What's happening? Anytime I stop paying attention to my mind, come back and just pay attention again. So those are the two ways you can meditate. And then the last one that I would suggest is any time that you react in the world, And we know whenever we react, it's the automatic whoosh experience of like, suddenly I'm in an activated internal part. I'm angry at the guy who cut me off and I'm shouting suddenly, or my partner just did something and I'm crying. Like those sudden whoosh moments where you just feel like you're taken over by an experience. Take time to pause. If you can take space, great. Take space, go somewhere quiet, and internally make a connection with yourself and just ask, like, what happened? What part of me just did that? What are you afraid of? What are you hoping for? Just get curious about your own mind over and over and over again. This is really the work. Like just turning towards yourself and saying, what's going on inside of me? What about now? And now? Tell me more. I'm listening. There's a couple of different ways that we can actually track this. I think this is important. It'll be helpful for people. When you ask these questions of like, what's happening inside of me, and you pay attention, our brain actually speaks in 5 different languages. So any one of these different things gives you information and is a trailhead that you can go deeper. So our brain speaks in thoughts, the words that run through our head. Our brain speaks in images, which could be a memory or it could be a picture. An image could also be something like a smell, like a memory of a smell is an image. Our brain speaks in body sensations, tightness, heat, fluttering of your heart, your gut twisting, all of that sensation. For some reason, I did it out of order. And so now I'm like, wait, which one's next? So, feelings. So our affects, our emotional states, it's actually different from the other ones. Getting in touch with what you're feeling, being able to name your feeling will actually regulate your brain. So if you can name what you're feeling, great. And then there's one more that I'm not remembering. I'm going through what's called CYBAM in somatic experiencing. It's a type of therapy. So CYBAM, it's sensation, image, meaning is the thought, affect, behavior. Oh, this is the one I forgot. Behavior is my body wants to do some kind of movement. So if I have an interaction and somebody cuts me off, one thing that might happen in my body is I might want to like pull inward, or I might want to shout at them and my arms get really big and crazy. And I might not actually do that, but inside my body wants to do that. This also happens like if somebody's too close to you and your legs want to move backwards, that's a behavior impulse. That's information from our brain. And it's just another way of paying attention to what's going on inside.
This is so helpful.
Good, good. I'm glad. That was kind of disorganized. I think it made sense that we got them all.
Yeah, that made sense. That made sense.
Okay, good.
And I know we're almost out of time. I wanted to, though, really quick ask you. This is more like for my own knowing, but also for other people. When we're
Yeah.
together, we do that thing on the board with the colors.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Explain what that is and what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I use a tool. This is not necessarily a model of therapy. Like IFS is a model of therapy. It has a theory of mind and a theory about how our internal system works. ETT, the color chart that you and I have done, emotional transformation therapy, it's really using a tool. So I've got this spectrum of colors on a board. I also have these wands that have the same colors. And when you look at specific wavelengths of light, you activate different parts of your brain. You actually send blood and electricity to those parts of your brain, depending on which color you look at. And so when we use that tool, it is possible to help a person process information differently because you're actively turning on different parts of the brain in ways that normally their system would not do. Neural networks, they usually fire in the way that we're most used to because it's calorically expensive to change a neural network pattern. And so by doing the color chart, we can actually actively change that neural network because your brain is just taking in information differently.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, of course. It's fun, isn't it? That's one of my favorite tools.
Yeah. And I want to ask you too, just for anyone who is struggling with sugar addiction or binge eating, are there any other tools that you would offer, or things maybe they go look into?
Hmm. I'm thinking of my own journey with sugar in particular. One of the things that helped me the most was working with a nutritionist. I learned to undereat. Whenever I was young, like part of the messaging I got was be thin. And so I learned to undereat. And I did not understand the difference between like fats, proteins, and carbs. I did not know how my body needed each one in order to actually function well. And so I wasn't getting enough nutrients to where physically I was in a space where I could even say no to something that would have given me the calories I needed because we have to have fuel to run. And I would eat things because I was actually starving. I was so hungry. This is more like the physical stuff that we need in order to get through eating disorders. There's all the emotional side, which we've talked about so in depth. The main things are curiosity and compassion. But to have the physical nourishment of your body online as well, that can really help with moving through something painful like an eating disorder.
Yes, thank you so much for saying that. I think like 100% have to take care of like the physical body and make sure you're getting those needs for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. And I last can I ask you one more question that's kind
Yeah.
of okay, this may be cut out of the podcast, we'll see. I didn't realize that your focus was in like your counseling was in relationships.
Mhm.
I'm curious, so I just started dating dating a guy.
Right.
And I'm curious any advice you'd give for a new relationship.
Ooh, okay. This is fun. So first, I will say some resources you can look at. I put up free content every week on YouTube and also Instagram. So those are great resources if you're wanting to learn about relationship and sexuality. But really, the big ones are boundaries. I think boundaries are the key to having a good relationship. I think they're the most important thing we can learn because it's actually a skill and a practice more than anything else. And what boundaries do as you start practicing them is you begin to learn your own value. Boundaries teach us how to value ourselves. And then what they also do is they allow you to be in connection while also feeling protected, because there's often a pull, an internal pull inside of us between it's safer to be on my own because then I won't be hurt by anyone, but I really, really actually need to be in relationship. It's how we're built. And that pull takes us in two directions that do not fit together until you learn ways to be connected and protected. Hello, boundaries.
Hmm. Yes. What are some examples of boundaries that you feel like to like even what are boundaries
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So there are actually four different kinds of boundaries. I have a training on this called Boundaries Create Your Peace, because whenever you learn boundaries, your life will become more peaceful. Um, there's the physical boundary, what speaks safety to our body. There's the psychological boundary. It's my gatekeeper that allows me to keep anything that's unsafe outside and allow safe things in to my psyche. There's the containing boundary, which actually protects the rest of the world from me, because there are parts of me that can actually be harmful. And then the last one, the one that most people think about, is the executed boundary. These are whenever I set boundaries outside of myself with other people. If this thing happens, here's what I'm going to do. Yeah.
Okay. And I guess one thing I've been hearing a lot, just like with like Dr. Joe Dispenza or something, like being whole within yourself to be able to come into like attract um, just someone else that you're both showing up like fully and not kind of like in a codependent way.
Right. Right. Self-worth work, really.
Yeah, I guess, but so one question I have is around like being able to have needs and articulate needs, but
Hmm.
still being that whole self.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I think some of what we need to figure out, both inside of ourselves and as a society, is what's the difference between a need and a want, because they are different. And so being really clear internally about what do I need versus what am I just wanting? And then coming into relationship with, okay, when am I going to be making requests of another person? Asking them for something I would like that would maybe put them out a little bit. But if they care about me, they're probably going to do it versus a boundary. There is something that I am unwilling to tolerate, and here's how I'm going to protect myself if it happens.
Mhm.
Being really, really clear about all of that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, JAMI LYNN. Well, where can people find you? You mentioned these tools, so I'm so excited to check them out.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
So I have a website. It is my full name, JAMI LYNN Beulah. And then on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, I go by my business name, Practice Intimacy. So any of those you can find me on.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.